Listen, the biggest thing is when you're working with family businesses or you're working with another family member is, one, you need to share information as much as possible. And then
and we're back. Welcome to the latest episode of Commerce and Chill. I'm Jessica Johnson Cope.
I'm Waleed.
What's good, Waleed?
Life's good. It's Friday. We're shooting a couple days later than normal. It's a holiday weekend coming up. Actually, oh shit, it's a double holiday weekend. Was it Father's Day this weekend and Juneteenth?
Juneteenth. Let's celebrate the fact that we all have access to great information. If you didn't, go watch the previous episode and just get your mind right, because for Juneteenth, we should be supporting one another. We should be supporting Black businesses and not just eating red watermelon and drinking red pop and fried chicken. But that's somehow some people celebrate. I'm not knocking your celebration.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, I celebrate Juneteenth by making jobs, creating jobs, closing deals.
But you mentioned that it's Juneteenth weekend, but it's also Father's Day weekend. So in honor of the fathers out there.
Won't be Father's Day. It'll be after Father's Day by the time this airs. But yeah, we're filming it before Father's Day.
We still want to celebrate the fathers, especially fathers who leave a legacy, create a legacy for their children in the business and economic space. So the title of today's episode is Rich Dad, Your Dad, Lessons We Learned from Our Fathers About Business. So often it seems like for Mother's Day, you pack out the restaurants, you buy all the flowers, spend lots of money on gifts. When it comes to Father's Day, it's just like
dads get poo-pooed on them.
Yeah,
it's Mother's Day is way more going on than Father's Day.
It's like, Dad, can you warm up the grill and barbecue?
Go cook, go do some work for your day.
But what we found, if you don't know, my dad is no longer living, so I don't get the chance to celebrate with him. But your dad is still alive.
Yeah, but I don't get the chance to celebrate with him
because he doesn't celebrate these holidays. But it really just got us to thinking about different,
amongst other things,
lessons that we learned watching our fathers in their respective businesses, and what it meant for us as business leaders, as well as what it meant for us in terms of growing our family, and as well as our family business. So where would you like to start, Chief?
Shit.
When you were growing up with DC,
well, I think
what are some of the lessons that you learned from watching him work in the business?
We would be here for more than 29. We would be here more than 29 minutes if I went on that long road of lessons.
So you tell me where you want to start then.
No, I know we can start there, but I think one thing is, which is a coincidence, which didn't dawn on me until not too long ago when we were talking about this topic, is that we both took over businesses from our dads. So it wasn't like, it was other people in the family involved, et cetera, et cetera. We both took over businesses directly from our dads, who were the sole ones running the business at that time. So I thought that was it's very interesting.
It's like we run in a marathon, not a marathon. You run in a relay, and they actually handed the baton off to us.
Or dropped it, or we just took it. Whatever. It's all
much
different
better
scenarios.
visual if you imagine our dads.
I'm keeping it real. I'm keeping it real for
us.
everyone in on the Commerce and Chill family. Like, I'm not gonna pull any wool over it, because being in business with family, it's great, and other times it's not. So like, I'm gonna tell it how it is and not try and.
So tell the people something actionable, because sometimes one of the things I hear from people in business, more in particular mature people in businesses. Oh, wow, that's great. I tried to get my kids interested in my business and they didn't want to do it. So I think I'm just going to have to sell.
Well, that's one thing you should start talking about is, and that's a great point. Were you interested in taking the business over, or did you take it over for other reasons? So that goes right to the question you said. People, there are people, parents or whoever, grandparents, there are elders, we'll say, who are running businesses. And I've heard them say, like, my kids, they're not interested. And I'm like, all right, sell it to me. Like, I want to do more business. I want to have a umbrella corporation with a bunch of businesses underneath it. and build out a great team, and then people can get pieces of that business and have equity and run it. I don't need to own it and run the whole thing. I'd rather acquire a bunch and then split it up with a bunch of people, run them well, and then we have this huge economic engine that are these businesses generating revenue for the team members who are on the team, as well as that have shares, who have equity. But yeah. So anyway, the question is,
You said, are you interested?
so
Or
yeah, what led you?
me?
Right,
I
because
thought you were going to start with
no,
something
you
actionable.
start. The question, you said you heard from people who say they have businesses and their children aren't interested in taking it over.
Right.
So the question I put out there is, what led you to do it? Was it you wanted to take over the family business, or was it other reasons that you had to do it
So just
or chose to do it?
the abbreviated version of my story. I wasn't living here in New York for several years, and when my dad first became ill, I left my house, my job, and moved back to New York so that I could be close to him to see, put eyes on him and see what was going. And in the course of that, my mother said I couldn't come back without a job. I was working for somebody else and was on track to get promoted into management. And my manager at the time said, well, why should I make you a manager? Like, what would you do? And in that conversation, it's like an epiphany. I had an epiphany, and I was like, I'm here building somebody else's brand when there's a place with my name on it that I could be building. And so to have something with my name on it and know that I could make a difference, that was very inviting to me. At the same time, knowing the work that my dad and my grandparents before him had poured into Johnson Security, I could not see the business dying because I was not willing to at least try.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what interested me. It was like a challenge, but at the same time, knowing that I had a great opportunity before me to continue a legacy and put my own, my own stamp on it. And then it was like, what did I have to lose? If it didn't work out, I could always go back to the other job where I was interviewing. Right. So that's what interested me. And I think that
so it interests you, but you kind of had to do it at the same time.
I didn't have to do it. I mean, I could have.
Well, I mean, your interest got, let's say, accelerated because you said dad was sick and you came back to New York. So that accelerated your interest versus like, he'd have been like, oh, I'm good for another like 30 years. I'm not retiring anytime soon. And then you'd be like, come on, like hand it over to me, like et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Like,
it was something about the doctor saying you may have 2 years left, sir. That they gave us a sense of urgency,
whole new perspective on things
about coming up with a plan, executing, and taking some kind of action, making stuff happen, as opposed to, okay, let's just wait and see.
Right.
And then luckily, because we started having conversations shortly after my dad was diagnosed with cancer, we were able to start a very weak transition plan because what we thought was going to be 2 years ended up being 4 months.
So accelerated.
Yes.
Transition plan.
Yes. What about you?
Ooh,
you can't ask a challenging question and not give a challenging answer.
Yeah, mine is very
convoluted, complicated. We'll tell the people something.
So, like the short version. So, in Jessica's, in your case, it was you took over due to these extenuating circumstances. So, in my case, it was kind of, how do I put this?
I don't know.
I think it was extenuating circumstances because for those you in Commerce and Chill Land who don't know DC, which is what we call my dad, he goes by his initials, his secret undercover business local neighborhood name. He wants to ride the horse until the end, no matter what. Like the horse could be going in the wrong direction. The horse needs food. It needs water. He's like, nah, I'm going to keep going. So in this case, when it came to the laundry, we pretty much had to go in and be like, it's time. Like you need to take a step back because you're not running the business is running you. That's the best way to put it. So, we went and had a discussion and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Had some talks and some negotiations, and he decided to say it's time to retire. And then we stepped in. But that was probably a multi-decade process because I had worked in and out the business numerous times. Yeah.
So one of the things we had in the notes was just work ethic. What are some of the things you learned about business and about life from watching your father's work ethic?
Yeah, my dad has a ridiculous work ethic, but it's almost negative. It's so ridiculous, it's negative. Now that I'm older and look back at it, and if when you look at Instagram culture where they're like hashtag no sleep, hashtag hustle, and all that, like he fits that. But when that's all you're exposed to or what you know, you look at it a certain way. But over time, I was like, okay, I'll take this piece from it that is good, that I think is good. Then there's other pieces I'm like, nah, you can't do that. I can't do that. Anybody else can do it or he can do it. It's good for them, but it's not good for me. But he has a ridiculous work ethic. Like he will continue to do it. But it's so ridiculous, it becomes a detriment. And we talked about this in other episodes where business owners get into that mindset of if things don't get done right, they get to this point where they're like, you know what, I'll just do it myself. And then that becomes like, it just consumes them. So no matter what keeps going wrong or somebody else does wrong, they're like, oh, I don't need them. I'll do it myself. And you must realize that you cannot do everything yourself. So that type of work ethic, that mentality, that mindset we talked about ends up consuming you, and it ends up becoming a negative. You think it's a positive because you're like, oh, I can outwork everybody and blah, blah, blah. You can. And what will happen is your business will continue to stay small. And it will get smaller. It will become a micro business because after a while, your body will shut down. You will shut down mentally after a while. You cannot continue to do it. And you're talking to somebody who worked like a year and a half running a location from 6 a.m. to like 10:30 p.m. for over a year and a half, doing everything totally by myself, 7 days a week. Only days I got off were holidays. And let's be clear, DC don't celebrate no holidays, as you said earlier. So the store was only closed on Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day.
And then New Year's Eve, you're going to be working late because people don't want to go into the new year with dirty clothes.
New Year's Eve is the busiest day for us in the laundry industry. But it's changing now because of delivery service and other things. But that's another conversation. But those are the only days I got off. And it was like, okay, like, I want to go out. I want to have, so I'm like 6 a.m. work. And I'm like, hurry up and close up the store. And it's like, I'm out at 10:05. I'm like, I got out early today. I got out 25 minutes earlier. And like my friends are like, we're over here, meet us over there. Like, and they got to drive. I'm dozing off in the car, whatever. I'm like, yeah. So work ethics, your dad.
Yeah. So as a child, my dad was in politics and government service. And so I remember as a wee tot watching him campaign and going out and shaking hands and meeting the people. So very community oriented, community facing, listening to people and engaging them in dialogue. Once he was elected to the New York State Assembly, his time was kind of split between being up at the Capitol and being back home. Now, luckily, for us, the legislative session in New York only runs basically from January to June. So that was only half of the year that he wasn't there. And at that time, my brother and I were in like preschool and kindergarten. And by the time we actually were of grade school age, he was back home working under one of the governor's offices. And then in 1983, I remember we got a new governor and my dad got replaced. And I was sitting in the train station waiting to go home. And I was talking to the transit cop and I was like, my dad got fired. And the cop was like, little girl, you shouldn't tell anybody that. I was like, but he did. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing because
he got fired.
He understood. And
it's politics. Like a new administration comes in, people go out. It's not really you got fired.
When you're a political appointee,
your time is just up.
You serve at the pleasure of the person who appointed you. And if somebody else comes into that role, that appointment might not continue.
Yeah, your time is just up. On to the next thing.
And so he immediately jumped in and started working with my grandmother. And my grandmother was a meticulous woman about her business. She handled her business. And then when she finished, she went home and always was able to incorporate family into everything she did. And I was able to watch both of them work together. Very different styles, but still nonetheless committed to doing the work that would get the results that would make a difference for the people who mattered. And At times, my dad had very strong opinions. My dad was a very intelligent man. He finished college at 20 years old. He was young when he went to law school. When he graduated law school, he was 23.
That dude was a Rhodes Scholar. It's like, that
He
dude
was a
Renaissance.
ROAD scholar.
That dude's a Renaissance man, all right? Let's be clear
And
about that.
so some of the work that he did was in his mind.
Right.
And so you can't always understand that. You can't always see that because it may look like someone isn't taking action because they're thinking. And because of the respect that he had for my grandmother and her business dealings, he would often defer to her when it came to making decisions for the business.
Right.
And so once my grandmother retired and then eventually passed away, it was a little bit different for him because he didn't have that same sounding board. And he may or may not have always trusted his own judgments because he didn't always get the chance to execute on what he thought because they were working together.
Sometimes you just think too much.
So you can't overthink. It's great to have a partner in business who you can run ideas against and who will challenge you to be better. But ultimately, you have to remember to trust yourself and to move in your intelligence, especially if you have a proven track record of getting success. Now, if you're new to business, you may think, oh, well, I don't have that track record. Yeah, but if you've accomplished anything, whether it's you graduated from high school, you started a lemonade stand, you volunteered and was selected as the captain of the volunteer committee, you've accomplished something. Leverage those experiences in your business and remind yourself that you're already great. So just move in that greatness. And I think, especially when it comes to men in business, especially when it comes to our fathers, we don't look at them the same way as we look at our mothers. Right? I mean, I know that much is true.
Yeah, I don't. I just don't.
But in terms of work ethic, I did learn a lot about my dad and about working, how to show up at work, how to incorporate your thoughts in your actions. And it's been tremendous for me. And I don't think I realized until very recently how much of an impact that had on me. Like one of our colleagues recently said to me, you know, Ms. J, you're really intelligent. And like, this is not like a smoke puffing situation. Like you're really intelligent. You look at things differently than most people do. And you look at situations from different sides. And what it reminded me is that sometimes people on our teams may not take as many perspectives to look at a situation from as many different angles as we do because they haven't had the opportunity to do that. But in business and in life, the more experience you have, the more things that you're exposed to, you will build that critical thinking muscle. You will develop a better skills around how to look at challenges and how to potentially address those challenges because you realize one size does not fit all. But that comes with experience, that comes with time, that comes with facing more challenges. So if you stay in your safe zone, that you're robbing yourself of opportunities to practice intelligence at work.
I don't know. You expect me to say something after all that? Like you just went on for like mad long. But I don't know what else to say. All right. Thanks for coming today. She crushed it. I'm done. I got nothing else to say. Happy Father's Day.
So as a man, what does it mean for you to follow in your father's footsteps?
Yeah. To me, it's whatever. It happens. And to me, it's on the individual. Like one, I would probably never name our child a junior. I would never name my child after me. We have a son. I'm not naming him after me because they need to have their own identity. They're gonna have enough to deal with just in life, whatever. The fact to be like, oh, your dad did this, or you know, your daughter, your mom did this. Like, why aren't you living up to their expectation? They don't need to live up to, you know, whatever you got. You got big shoes to fill, whatever they say. So like I've been through it. I still hear it now.
I mean, people call you, sometimes some of the people in the neighborhood call you Little DC.
Still do to this day. And it's all good.
And you're a big grown man.
That's all right. If that's how they view it and it makes them feel whatever connection they had to the business, we've been in the neighborhood over 30 years. I get it. Like there are generations who've come to, you know, our businesses didn't start just with the laundry. It started with my dad and two uncles. My uncle got hurt at his job. And I think they gave him the story is that he like cut his finger or something at work, and he got like $1,000 as some kind of compensation because he got injured on the job. And back then, it was like $1,000 was a hell of money, and it was just like, whoa, we got $1,000. And the three of them decided to open up a little store, and they opened up a little meat market. They had like fresh meat, some produce, and a little store, probably a little bigger than this conference room we're in right now. And like they started doing it. And then they moved from there to a bigger store across the street. And they were like, oh, we should just do more than just meats. We should do produce and blah, blah, blah. And it was like a mini supermarket. And like, when I say a supermarket, not like a bodega, like you just go in and be like, yeah, there's some like dusty items on the shelf or whatever, or you buy like Lucy's and no, or, you know, whatever else you get, Black and Miles. It was legit like small. It was like a corner store, but it was long. And you go to the back and it was straight real butcher, not the showcase you go to now when you go in a bodega and be like, can you make me a ham and cheese sandwich? And dude just reaches in and slices it. No, you went in the back. We had a walk-in freezer, and like Rocky, when they was in there punching the beef, the sides of like beef, there was like sides of beef hanging in. I was like a little kid walking around in there, it's swinging and hitting me. And it's like whole chickens and all kind of meat in there. And it's like, it's fresh. We would go right to the slaughterhouse, pick it up and bring it and cut it fresh for customers when they came in for, you know, whatever they needed or whatever they wanted. So I totally messed up my phone here. So it was like, it was a mini supermarket. Like you would go in and people would come in literally on Saturday and Sundays, and we had shopping carts in there. Ain't no bodegas with no shopping carts in it. We had shopping carts, and people would literally fill up a whole shopping cart and do their grocery shopping. They were like, yeah, your produce is fresh and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, the three of them did that, and then we migrated into the laundry business. And then, you know, slowly over time, you know, one uncle left, another uncle left. Then, you know, they retired over time. And then my dad was doing some things by himself. And then, you know, lo and behold, here I am. So I always hear like, oh, people still come in the soapbox to this day. And they're like, oh, your dad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool. It doesn't bother me. But what is a challenge is I have to balance sometimes what I do and don't do so it doesn't infringe or make him feel any, I don't want to say any
protect
less.
His ego?
Yeah, it's like, because I could, like, there's some things I've done and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that, because I'm like, now he's feeling like, oh, I'm poo-pooing on what he's done. But then there's other times where I'm just like, listen, like, I'm gonna take piece of humble pie here and I'm just gonna let this go or slide. And there's other days I'm like, you just gotta deal with it, old man. I'm sorry. Like, because if we're gonna grow this, like, you gotta put your egos to the side at one point.
He got more than one ego?
Yeah, you trust me. Yeah, he do. But it's a balance. And when you're working with family or you're taking over after family, and sometimes you have to separate, which came to the whole, like, the soapbox has another name. You know, the soapbox is totally separate from when we had Koch Brothers and Sons Laundromat. So it was a separate name, separate entity, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, there's multiple reasons behind that. You know, we talked about it in other episodes, the different clientele that we're servicing. But also, sometimes you need to separate. And, you know, we've even had discussions like, since we closed the store, how do we reincorporate the original name so then it carries that legacy and that story on? Mm-hmm. Even though there's plenty of people in the community now, since the community has changed and grown so much, they're like, Cope who?
Right.
Like, they don't know. But then there's others, like OGs, they're just like, yeah, I remember when you're here, like, they come and tell me stories, stuff like I don't even remember from when I was a kid.
Right. I'll say this, even though my dad is gone, there were some times where he would try to share advice with me based on what he had done in business and what he had done in life. And I wasn't always receptive. And I see this sometimes in people that we interact with. They are not receptive to input, advice, not even going to say critique, but just advice based on lived experiences. Because one of the things I used to think about when my dad gave me career advice was, but you never really worked for anybody. Like,
how you know?
He worked in the DA's office for like a hot second.
He worked for somebody?
But it was so short compared to the time that he was in the assembly. And I guess he had to be accountable to his constituents and the other voters.
In politics, you work for somebody.
And then coming into
some
the
of them
business,
just choose to ignore that shit.
But I thought that because he didn't have extensive experience working what I called outside of the house. He didn't have experience working in corporate environment. That there was only so much he could tell me. And now when I look back on the advice that he shared with me, it was brilliant. If I had had sense enough to listen,
no comment.
I would have had better outcomes. And so one of the things I'll share with you, whether you're working for someone else, whether you're running your business, whether you report to a family member or you manage or lead people in your family, don't beget the advice that someone can give you based on their lived experience, especially our fathers. They may see things from a different vantage point because they faced much different challenges than we have faced. And oftentimes they don't always tell us those challenges because they want to protect us. Or,
that's a good thing and a bad thing.
And so just listen, don't judge, and see how you can apply it to make your situation better.
Yeah. Listen, the biggest thing is when you're working with family businesses or you're working with another family member is, one, you need to share information as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, listen and absorb that information, and don't take it and really think about, what it is, whether you agree or disagree about it with it. You might not agree with all of it, but there might be something you could take away from it and say, you know what, I'm just going to extract this part. But you need to have those dialogues. And I hear a lot of time, which I think is really, to me, I think it's kind of, I think it's just kind of silly and it's kind of ignorant, where in some family businesses where they don't have these discussions with whatever the next generation, like if they were like, I've worked in all of our family businesses throughout my life when I was like, I can remember like running around a supermarket and like packing stuff out or, cutting meat in the back and, eating some of the snacks, the food off the shelf too. And my dad would be like, you're eating the profits, you know that? And I was like, yeah, whatever. I was like, fucking Yankee Doodle's cupcakes taste good, bro. I'm eating these joints. I'd be like, what? I'm eating them. Like, how much? Like, come on. We pay cost. But anyway, like they should be open. I see in some businesses where they have these discussions and they're always excluding people who are in the family, in the business from it. And,
right.
And I witnessed that when I was growing up and part of that. Like things would get ready to be said and they'd be like, oh, you need to leave the office or you need to leave the room. And I'd be like,
this is an adult conversation.
I'd be like, wait, what the f? Because I got to take the trash out. You don't tell me to go outside when it's time to sweep the floors to take the trash out. You want me to do that, but you don't want me to sit at the table and hear some stuff.
So yeah, you want to share that information. And then if there's anybody out there who says, but I don't have a father, I don't have a relationship with my father. There are father figures. Like the beauty of my dad being very involved in my life is that I had surrogates, his friends, his homeboys. So I have my godfather who'd been riding this ride with me since I was born. One of my other unofficial godfathers who was my dad's friend and associate when he worked in the assembly, and other people that I've picked up along the way who are like uncles and adopted grandfathers. Just because you may not have that biological tie, you can have a father figure that's able to pour into you and your business the same way that your biological would if he's not around. All the dads out there, we love you, we celebrate you, we wish you the best, and we look forward to seeing you.
This is a late Father's Day because when this airs, Father's Day has already passed.
All right. This has been Commerce and Chill. I'm Jessica Johnson-Cope.
I'm Waleed saying happy Father's Day from the future.
And we're out. Bye.
Wait, is it the future or really? It's the past. No, it's the future.